Hello, welcome back. I'm Rachel Gonzalez. I am a recovering perfectionist, just trying to become more like Jesus and live in God's perfect will for my life. Today, I am sharing my son Brady's birth story and pregnancy and birth story because all of it has God's hand in it. And, I love sharing how God works in my life. And so, tomorrow is October 14th, and we have three birthdays in our house. My son, my daughter, and our foster daughter are all having a birthday tomorrow. So today I want to share about Brady and just about how God brought him into our lives and just really celebrate how special he is to our family. Just what a miracle and a gift he is. So to start out, we had our first son, Josiah, in January of 2019. And when he was born, basically, I was like, well, it is all downhill from here. Like, we are on a roller coaster and we're not getting off. So I told my husband, I was like, I want another one, like super quick. We decided because I had that January maternity leave and it was really hard to go back to the classroom after, not just because I didn't want to leave my baby, but also like I had to go back to a classroom that was not mine anymore. Like I have very specific routines and procedures and things like that I would like to have in my classroom. And when I got back, they were pretty much gone. And plus, like right when I went back in March, we were gearing up for STAR and testing and all that stuff. So it was tough to go back. Um, but we decided, okay, well, we'll start trying in September and we will hopefully have a summer baby. So that way I won't have to take maternity leave again, which sounds like, so nice. So in September, I did get pregnant, luckily. However, about 5 weeks later, or well, not really 5 weeks later, 5 weeks into the pregnancy, we lost that baby. So there was about a week and a half of time that I knew I was pregnant and I was super excited. We had told all of Jose's family by that time because, we had already had a baby and everything had turned out fine. So we didn't really think anything of it and we were just telling them. And then we also were planning to tell my family and all my friends when we went to my brother's wedding that like 2 weeks later. And I didn't get to tell them. I had to instead tell them, well, I was pregnant, but now I'm not. And that was really sad. Um, and then instead of listening to the advice of literally everyone, we got pregnant again like 2 weeks later. So, and then that one, we found out we were pregnant. We didn't tell anybody because it was, like we had just had a miscarriage and we didn't want to rush into it again. And 2 days after I found out that I was pregnant, I miscarried again. So, had two miscarriages back to back. And, I don't obviously know why. I had just quit pumping in September and then got pregnant right away. So I think that maybe like my hormones were off balance. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it. Um, and then obviously getting pregnant right after a miscarriage, like, everything was crazy. So after that, we did decide to take a break. And, we were talking about it and we're like, okay, the holidays are coming up. Let's just enjoy the holidays. Let's enjoy our son's first birthday. Maybe we'll go on spring break in March and we can start trying after that. Like, we didn't have a plan, but we knew we wanted to wait at least like a couple months. I did have some blood testing done during that time and everything showed normal. I was a little bit vitamin D deficient, but that was pretty much it. I just started taking a vitamin D supplement and it helped. So, anyway, we don't know why, but that happened. So we get through the holidays, we get through our son's first birthday. In January, we went to the beach. Okay. So we were going to the beach kind of a lot at the time with like that within that year. With my husband's family, just because we knew somebody who had a place down there. We were getting like pretty good deals on staying. So we would just go and stay at the beach. And we go down, and I just wasn't tracking my cycle really because I was like, we already had these losses and whatever. So I wasn't really tracking like super crazy like I usually did with like the temperature and all that stuff. And I knew that I wasn't really in my ovulation window. So I'm like, well, we just kind of like threw caution to the wind. So that was like one of the last weekend in January. And then didn't think anything of it. Came back that Friday night. I was sitting at home. My husband was gone. Um, I don't remember what he was doing, but he was gone, and I was at home and I had not done my devotional for the day. So I was just sitting on the couch, like JJ was sleeping, and I was reading my devotional. And this verse comes up, and it's one of my favorite verses. This version is a little bit different, but I'm going to read it anyway. It's Jeremiah 1:5. It says, I chose you before I formed you in the womb. I set you apart before you were born. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. And so when we were pregnant originally, before we miscarried, my husband and I were talking about boy names because we already had a girl name picked out from like our previous pregnancy that we didn't get to use. And we're talking about boy names, and he really wanted the name Brady after Tom Brady. I'm like, fine, whatever. I like the name Brady. Love it. Don't really care who it's after or whatever. So like I like the name. So we had already decided that we really liked Brady, and we had been talking about, you know, middle names for Brady. One of my favorite boy names that I still would love to use someday for a boy is Oliver. And but I didn't like that his initials would be BO. So I was like, I don't know, I don't really like that. And I like was so set against having the initials be BJ because I just like for obvious reasons don't like the name BJ for a boy. So I read this and I was like, I really love the name Jeremiah. And I texted a screenshot of the scripture to my husband, where I don't remember wherever he was, and I said, "What do you think about Brady Jeremiah?" And he goes, "Yes, I like it." I'm like, "Okay." And then I was sitting there praying about the name and about, mind you, I like didn't know I was pregnant, okay? So like I'm just thinking like I'm reading this and like we already had this name picked out, and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, like this name is wonderful. I really like it." I'm praying, that if we have another son, that Brady Jeremiah would be like Jeremiah of the Bible, like a prophet to the nations, like all these things. And so that's like Friday, okay? Sunday, I go to church and this was February 2nd. I remember because it was my friend's son's birthday party. I'm at church and I'm like, just start sobbing during one of the songs. I'm listening to the words and I'm sobbing and I'm like, this is weird. Like I can't stop crying. Like I was like, I don't even feel sad really. I just can't stop crying. And I'm like, I think I might be pregnant. And I told my friend when I got to the birthday party, I was like, I think I'm pregnant. And she's like, why do you think that? I'm like, well, I can't stop crying. And that's really weird, So um then I was realizing like I'm really tired, and so I looked back at my app that I use for tracking my cycle and stuff, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I could have ovulated early. I don't feel like it's likely, but I could have. Um, and even so, like it still would have been days after that beach trip. So I was like, I'm probably not pregnant. I'm probably just like whatever, psyching myself up. But I said, if I don't get my period by Friday, February 7th, I will take a test. So I did not take a test until Friday. On that day, I was 12 days past my ovulation. And I'm like, well, I might as well take a test. I want to know. So I take the test in the morning and it was positive. And I did not tell my husband. Um, that day, I went and got like one of those candy hearts from the store, one that was big enough to fit the test in it. And I gave it to him that night as like a pre-thing, like Valentine's gift. And he was opening it and he was acting weird because he was like, afterwards he told me, he's like, I thought that there was no because there was no chocolate in it. And I took it out to put the test in there. He's like, I thought there was no chocolate. He thought I was like punking him, like I ate the chocolate or something. And he's like, and then he saw the test. So he was like, oh, and I think he like laughed or something. I recorded it. It was funny. Um, but that's how I told him that, like, okay, well, we're having another baby, maybe. And obviously at this point it was very scary because I had had two miscarriages and I didn't know, how this one was going to go. But I felt very confident, like after having read that verse and not knowing that I was pregnant, and I was feeling super like um nostalgic and like nesty kind of like, and I know that doesn't usually happen like at the beginning of pregnancy, but I remember that weekend I had taken all of my son's like really baby newborn clothes and like was putting them away, and I was like kind of sad about it, and I was also feeling just like very much like I needed to do it. And so just one of those weird pregnancy things. And I was like, I'm fairly certain that this is going to work out. This pregnancy is going to work out, and it's going to be a boy. Like I had very strong feelings. Also the Chinese gender chart said it was going to be a boy. So I also felt because of that it was going to be a boy. So, um, when, after we found out, like, made my appointment, I was super sick. About 7 weeks in, or so, I went, on a walk with a friend. So I went, it was like a 45-minute drive, drove there. And on the way there, like that day, I just wasn't feeling very sick. And I'm very sick in pregnancy. And I just like felt an absence of symptoms. And I was like, great, like I'm probably having a miscarriage. I'm so worried. So the whole way there, I was just praying, 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 praying. For the baby, for me, for life, for everything. And I cried out to God and I was like, God, how many babies am I going to have to lose? And audibly, this is the second time I've ever heard God's voice. Audibly, I heard four. And obviously, then I was like, well, this is three, then, like, great, this sucks. And I got there and I was talking to my friend, and, we went on a walk, and it was just like, I was so like bummed, and then shortly after I started feeling symptoms again, um, like I think like 2 days later or something, and there was no signs of miscarriage. And so I went to the doctor. We found out we were pregnant. The rest of that pregnancy was pretty uneventful, except I did have gestational diabetes, which was terrifying at first because I had no clue, um, what that meant or what was going to happen. Of course, again, having had loss, I was like, well, am I going to be, and especially because I had heard like, okay, you're going to have four losses. I'm like, am I going to lose this baby now at 28 weeks? It was terrifying. But before that, we did, I think it was like in May sometime, I think we did 16 weeks. Went to an imaging center my friend used to find out the gender, and found out it was a boy. I took Jose and JJ. It was actually really fun because I had ordered some stuff and it was in an Amazon package. And I said, hey, Jose, on this specific Saturday, we're going to go do something. Don't make any plans. And he's like, okay, what? And I'm like, well, don't worry about it. Like, I'm going to take you as a surprise. So we had gotten there, and he thought like inside of the package was maybe like a jersey of some kind. We were going to get somebody's autograph or something. And he opened the package and it was like gender reveal stuff because we were going to have a gender reveal the next day. And he didn't know that yet. And so he uh, opens the package and he's like, what is this? And he starts looking at it. And he was like, oh, are we going to find out the gender? And I said, yeah, like this is an imaging center. We're going in, we're going to go find out. So it was really sweet. It was just him and I and JJ. And at the time, because it was during like, COVID, my husband, Jose, he wasn't going to be allowed to come to the anatomy scan. So he wouldn't have been able to find out the gender with me. So we got to do it early at this imaging center together with our son, which was fun. They confirmed it was a boy, which I like already knew in my bones that it was. And, then the next day was Mother's Day, and everybody came over for Mother's Day. And I had texted everybody Saturday night to say, hey, let's do a gender reveal on Zoom tomorrow. So, like, all my friends and family and stuff, we're going to be on Zoom to get to see the reveal. So, everybody came over, we set it up, we like did a practice run the night before to make sure everything worked because it was a balloon drop with like some streamers and stuff. And we put it up. Uh, everybody came, we took videos. It was a boy. Everyone was like super surprised because they thought that I was too calm for it being a boy. Um, which honestly, like when I thought it was a boy and when I knew it was a boy, like found out, I wasn't sad because I did always want a girl and I like was nervous like okay, well now I have two boys, what if I never have a girl? Um but I loved the idea of JJ having a brother and just like having somebody so close in age to him. So we were really excited that it was a boy and we did all that. I mean, JJ has like his best buddy. They're literally best friends. They sleep in the same bed, even though they have bunk beds. Um, they just do everything together and it's really sweet. So I do love that Brady was a boy. And I also do love that even though it drives me crazy, he is very strong willed and opinionated because just as I said, I prayed and prayed and prayed over that scripture and over him, just being someone who can really bring people to Christ. I know that those skills are going to serve him well in the future. It's just so hard to be the person raising that person. So, I still pray over that all the time, daily, weekly, monthly, like for him to use the skills that he is building in being defiant and being opinionated and strong-willed, like to use those for good and to use them for Christ. So let's, if you want to join me in praying for him, that would be great. Um, so yeah, like I said, I mean, the rest of the pregnancy was pretty uneventful, thankfully. I did have to go see maternal fetal medicine for the gestational diabetes. So that was my first encounter with MFM. And um, it was fine. I mean, I got to see the baby more often, which like wasn't great. Like I liked seeing him, but also I just feel like when you have additional monitoring like that, it can just instill some fear. So 3 days before he was born, I went on a Monday to MFM to just have everything checked, and they told me that my son was 8 pounds 3 ounces. And at the time, I was only 39 weeks. So they're like, well, he's going to be a pretty big baby, obviously, because you had gestational diabetes. Usually, people with GD have bigger babies. And this is where he's measuring. And I was like, cool. It's going to be huge. But it's fine. It's fine. No worries. He was due on October 17th, which was a Saturday. And I was hoping that he was going to come on October 11th because that is the day that Jose and I met in 2013. He did not come on the 11th. And on Wednesday, the 14th, so when I went to that appointment on Monday, I scheduled a membrane sweep for Wednesday, the 14th, because basically they were saying like they didn't want me to go past my due date because I had GD and because he was big. They didn't want me to go past my due date, but I didn't want to have to be induced. So they were like, well, if on, Wednesday, a couple days before your due date, we do a membrane sweep, that should put you into labor within the next couple days. Um, and because my doctor was not on call that coming up weekend where he was going to be like where he was due. So we decided Wednesday we would do the membrane sweep. Well, thankfully, we didn't have to because sorry, I'm thinking about the fact that fast forward to my daughter, we did do a membrane sweep and it didn't work. So that was so horrible. But this, so we did like the night before, Tuesday night, I started to have contractions. It was like literally exactly the way it happened with my first son. I started contractions at like 10 p.m. Just 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 5 minutes, like just back and forth. And I'm like, great. It's going to be the exact same thing. So I go through the whole night contracting here and there, right? I didn't get any sleep hardly. Just trying to sleep through it, getting up, walking around, seeing if things were, progressing really or not. The contractions weren't getting consistent, so I just kept trying to sleep. I woke up in the morning and Jose's like, okay, well, what are you doing? Are you staying home? And I'm like, for what? Like, I'm going to stay here and contract? I was in labor for 45 hours with JJ. Like, no, thank you. I was like, I'm going to work. So he went to work. I went to work. I dropped my son off at daycare. And as I was dropping him off at the door, my water broke. This is the exact same thing that happened with my first son. My water broke early in the morning, and I still contracted without getting into active labor for like, I don't know, like over 24 more hours after that, before I just decided to do Pitocin. So I'm like, great. Well, my water broke. I'm not in active labor. Um, we're going to the hospital. We're getting Pitocin because I'm not going to do what I did with him before. So we're going to go get Pitocin. So I called my husband. I said, hey, my water broke. I still went to work anyway. I was like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to like probably be there for about an hour to finish a couple things up, button everything up, and leave. And he goes, okay, I'm going to do the same thing here at work and I will meet you at the house. So I went to work. I walked in. Luckily I was wearing, like a Depends diaper. So it was soaking up all the water. Had another one in my bag just in case. Changed it. Worked for an hour. My principal came in and was like, you can't be here. I'm like, it's fine. I'm not having a baby here. I'm going to be in labor for a while. And he's like, nope, you got to go home. You got to go. He was like, get out of here. I'm like, okay, let me just finish these things and then I'm going to go. So I finished everything up, went home. I just like bounced on the ball at home while I waited for Jose. And eventually he came. I think it was like around 10:30 maybe he got there. As soon as he got there, everything was already packed up. We already had our hospital bags ready to go, but I just put those last couple things in there. And we headed out. I told them at the daycare that my in-laws would be picking up our son and he was with them for the rest of the week and actually the whole weekend until we went and got him, or my in-laws brought him home. But we started to drive to the hospital. We stopped at Taco Bell, ate. My biggest craving with Brady was grilled, what are they called? Grilled cheese burritos or something like that, from Taco Bell. It was like a new item. I loved it. I got it every single time I went to the doctor. Probably why I had gestational diabetes. And yeah, I went and got Taco Bell. We went to the hospital. They checked me. My water had broken. They're like, okay, we're going to admit you. So they admitted me and I said, I want the Pitocin. Like, let's start it. One of the things that was really important to me in my birth of any of my children has been that my doctor delivers my baby. And because my doctor was not on call that day, she only worked a normal shift until 5 p.m. So we get there at like 11. I think I got into the room around noon and I'm like, we need to start the Pitocin now because like I think I was maybe 3 or 4 centimeters dilated and I'm like, we got to start now so I can get this baby out so that, like, because they say Pitocin's like a centimeter an hour. So I'm like, well, I'm already going to be past 5 o'clock. Like we got to start 2 hours ago. So, they hadn't started Pitocin. Just to say, my nurse was not somebody that I like really jived with at all. And so she comes in and I'm like, man, like I don't really like this nurse. Um I don't know, like I need to get the Pitocin started, but of course they have to have the baby on monitoring for like 30 minutes before they can start Pitocin. So I'm like, okay, well, like we got to get monitoring. Um, and then I ordered my favorite thing to eat or have in labor is some chicken broth because it's like it tastes very salty. It's like really nourishing. But it's like literally like one of the only things that the hospital will allow you to have. I always bring snacks, but I don't usually want them. I will take like honey and stuff, but I like the chicken broth. So I order chicken broth. It takes probably like 45 minutes for it to get there. Pitocin still hasn't started. I'm like, I'm so hungry and I'm like, I want this baby out. now. And I open up the broth and I taste it, and it tastes like celery. And I hate celery. So I'm like, this is vegetable broth. And I start sobbing, just sobbing. And my husband's like, what is wrong? I'm like, I just want chicken broth. This is vegetable broth. I hate this and nothing's going right. And I'm just like having a meltdown. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just call. So he calls, says that it's the wrong thing. Can you bring up the chicken broth? They put it in as a stat order. By this time, it's like after 1 o'clock. Then things start to get better. I see my doctor. She's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the Pitocin, this, everything. I love her. She makes everything better. She brings me so much peace. And so they bring up the chicken broth. I eat the chicken broth. They get me hooked up to Pitocin. I start laboring, a lot harder. My husband said that this time I was like screaming a lot more. It was a lot louder. Probably because the Pitocin on this birth was like a lot higher. There was like a higher dosage than it was with my other son. So I went through it pretty quick. So like they start the Pitocin at 2 o'clock. I get into active labor, and I think it was like 4:45. My doctor comes in. Like she's like basically closing out for the day. She's saying goodbye to all of her patients, and my nurse and her are conversing, and I'm like starting to be sad because I was only at a 6 when she checked me. And I'm like, well, she's not going to deliver my baby. Now I'm so sad. And I hear her whisper to the nurse, and she's like, start getting everything ready. Like, I know she's a 6, but like, start getting everything ready. I'm going to deliver this baby. And she's like, I'm going to go check on a patient. Like, so I don't know if she knows that I heard her, but I'm like, she thinks that I'm going to have this baby within the next 15 minutes. She's crazy. She's like, I'm going to go check on another patient, and like, I'll come back and check on you right before I leave. So I'm like, okay. Well, then I get into this mindset of like, I got to have this baby. So within literally 15 minutes, I'm like, I'm ready to have this baby. And in my first labor, I had like thrown up and gone to the bathroom and done everything like for so long that I didn't really have anything left by the time the baby was born. This time I started to feel the urge to push. And I did push something out. And my nurse, who like I hadn't really been driving with, just gets into action. She's the only person in the room. I'm standing next to the bed and I'm like, I'm starting to push. She's like, oh no. She is cleaning me up, pushing me onto the bed, calling the doctor all at the same time. And my husband's like, what do I do? Like, how can I help you? So I get up onto the bed. She gets the doctor in there, and literally like the doctor walks in and I am pushing the baby out. I think it was like 2 or 3 pushes maybe. And he's out, she's there, catches him. It's like 5, I think he was born at like 5:12 or 5:13. So literally within 30 minutes, I went from a 6 to a 10, and my doctor got to deliver Brady. And I was so happy. It was just like the sweetest end to the day because I just felt like things were going so wrong for so long earlier in the day. And it just shows that like God has mercy on us. And even though like even the beginning of that pregnancy started out where I had a lot of doubts, I just continuously prayed through it. And it was wonderful. He was a really great nurser, but he had a lip tie, which hurt a lot, and a tongue tie. And we took him to a pediatric dentist or whatever, and they looked at it and they're like, yeah, we could, cut it. I don't think it's going to probably affect like speech or eating or anything like that, but we can still revise it if you want to. I opted not to because I knew I was going to be going back to work and pumping anyway. So I decided not to do it. So we never did that. He now has a lisp, and I don't know if that's why or not. I don't think it is, but just things that you worry about as a parent. Postpartum with Brady at first was super nice, easy. The recovery was great. And I was in a really good spot. I loved having two babies. I loved, spending my time with Brady alone while JJ was at school. Like, I just loved all of that. And then I think it was about 12 weeks. I had already gone back to work right after Thanksgiving break. And I was there for about 3 weeks. Then I came home and was home for 2 weeks with both boys. And then I got postpartum depression. And I don't really think it was hormonal. I think it was mostly situational because I was home with two kids. I was pumping, trying to like soothe the crying baby, who Brady was a little bit of a fussy baby because he had a lot of tummy issues. I mean, even still until just about this year, he still had like constipation and stuff. So he had a lot of tummy issues that were really hard. And then, of course, my son, who was almost 2 and had barely ever watched TV in his life, was literally watching TV all day. So that was, just hard. But um, after I went back to work and got in a good routine and was going to therapy and stuff like that, everything really got better. And we love having two boys. It is very hard some days, but I'm very thankful for Brady, and I'm thankful for what he has done in his short little life and what he will do in the future. And that is the story of how we got pregnant with him, how he was born, and I'll be sharing Ellie's hopefully tomorrow or coming up soon. So see you then.